Welcome everybody onto our program for Yom HaShoah. I'm just going to say a few words at the beginning and then introduce Tova. I'm sure that many of you, family and friends, already know her, and others who are meeting her for the first time. Um, and then we're going to give Tova the opportunity to tell her story. And after she tells her story, our cantor is going to chant the El Maleh. There's an El Maleh that's unique to Yom HaShoah. And then I will recite a Kaddish, again, a unique Kaddish for Yom HaShoah. And then following that, we will give people the opportunity to ask questions. The host of the program is Miriam. She's waving her hand right now. So if you have questions as we go along that you would like addressed later on, if you could send it to her specifically in the chat, that way we'll be able to manage all the questions a little bit later on. As we start, I just want to say a word about how we got to Tova being our speaker. So it's a little bit of a circuitous route, but one of our presidents, Kathy Nybart, had children at the Hebrew Academy of Morris County at the time, and some of her children knew Taya's children. And then it happened that Taya moved to Morristown, and we connected with her family here in Morristown. And Tova actually came to visit us at the Morristown Jewish Center for a Friday night or two. We also had the opportunity to meet her beloved husband, Alav HaShalom, a few times as well. And we had actually arranged for Tova to be our speaker for Kristallnacht last year. But due to the pandemic, we were not able to do that. So we arranged this program as well. So I'm very happy that Tova accepted my invitation to join us to help us commemorate Yom HaShoah. We call it Yom HaShoah, but the official name is Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura. It is Holocaust Memorial Day, but it also celebrates the heroism of the Jews who fought back. And in fact,
how do you want to hear people talk?
No, we need whoever's talking, you need to please go on mute. The only person you should be here, thank you. The only person you should, nope, you're back on.
Maybe nobody's talking because nobody's saying anything.
So I am speaking. Thank you. And then Tova will be speaking. So it's Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura.
I'll get the chair.
Miriam, can you? Thank you. It's Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura because the date that was chosen to commemorate this day, it was the Hebrew date of the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. And so the Hebrew date, which was chosen as the 27th of Nisan, except in years when it might come out, it's not supposed to come out on a Friday, so it does get changed periodically. So the Hebrew date is a little bit different this particular year. So let me just take a moment to introduce Tova more formally. I know that I'm not going to say the town's names correctly, and someone will correct me later. but she was born in 1938 in a suburb of Danzig. Her family came from Tomashov, but she'll say the name, a small town near Lodz in Poland, and returned there soon after the war broke out. She's among the youngest people to survive the Holocaust and one of the few Jewish children to have lived throughout the nightmare ordeals of Auschwitz. She was one of 5,000 Jewish children before World War II from her town, and at the end of the war, only one of five that survived from her town. After spending several years in a German sanatorium for tuberculosis and DP camps, Tova and her parents arrived in the US when she was 12 years old. They lived in Brooklyn, where she met and married her husband of 60 years, Tova Friedman, Alava Shalom. She received her bachelor's in psychology from Brooklyn College and a master's in Black literature.
Yeah, everybody's muted. You see?
From City College,
Right.
City College in New York. Together, they immigrated to Israel and lived there for over 10 years, where she taught at the Hebrew University of Mount Scopus in Yerushalayim. After returning to the US, she earned her master's degree in social work from Rutgers and became the director of Jewish Family Service of Somerset and Warren counties for over 20 years and still works there as a therapist. She has 4 children and 8 grandchildren, and she shares her story with students and audiences in public and private schools and colleges, synagogues. In 1998, her story appears in a book called Surviving Auschwitz, The Children of the Shoah, and she appeared in many news programs, including ABC with David Muir, PBS Hour with Malcolm Brambant, and has spoken for the Auschwitz Liberation Day. So it is our honor to invite Tova to share her story now.
Wow, thank you. I guess if you reach the old age of 83, which will be on my next birthday, I guess the resume gets long, right? So it's gonna get on. I just wanted to say, when you say it's my story, it's really a story of the children who didn't make it, of the 1.5 million children who were gassed, who were murdered in many different ways, starvation and drowning, in so many gassing. So it's by pure luck that I'm here, and I want to make that clear because I want to represent the children. I am not the youngest child to survive, but I am probably the youngest child with memories. And that's what makes me a little bit unique, because I seem to remember an awful lot. I just remember my thoughts. I even remember some of my dreams. We just finished Pesach, and we've been telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of leaving Egypt over and over and over again, every year. And we are told, tell it again, tell it again. We all know the story, yet we read it again. So I'll kama v'kama, as they say in Hebrew. So the story of the Holocaust, although many of you know my story, I feel compelled to tell it again as long as I live, because it's a story that we shouldn't forget. And I'm afraid that the younger generation will forget, because it happened so many years ago. I know some of my grandchildren are watching. I can't see them, but I know that they're here. And I don't know how long they will remember it. although some of them came to Auschwitz with me. My story really begins that in my great memory is when I was about 4.5. My parents we lived in a different, it's not a small town, by the way, it had about 50,000 people. It was called Tomashov Mazowiecki, 15,000 Jews. At the end of the war, 300. My mother came from a family of a gigantic family. They all had, they had so many children because they were religious. At the end of the war, there wasn't anybody left. She was a sole survivor. She was so unhappy and so depressed. It's interesting. Many people were very great during the war, but when the war ended, that the whole stress came to them. And at the age of 45, she just lay down and died. I was 18 years old. But my real good memory a strong memory was, I remember being under the table. We lived in a ghetto. When the war started, and we lived in a town, Danzig, which is a very big city, a free city of Danzig, my parents came back home. They wanted to be with their parents. And although they left their parents in a normal situation, when they came back, their parents already were in the ghetto, and we moved in with my grandparents and a lot of other people. There must have been 30, 40 people in one tiny apartment. And my memory is of being under the table because there was absolutely just no room. But within a short time, there was room because all the elderly people were killed. It's interesting that this very mighty German killing machine concentrated in the beginning mostly on the elderly and children. No elderly person was safe and no child was safe. My grandmother and her brother, I thought it was my grandfather, but now I recently found it was her brother, were killed and shot right outside our building. They would walk in and find children wherever they were. I was under a table with another girl, my age. For some reason, she walked out from under the table and she was taken and never seen before, and never seen again. We were told that she was taken to a forest with other children. She was 1 year older than I was. 1 year, I was 4, she was 5. She was undressed and made standing with all the little children by the grave and shot. When I went to Auschwitz with her sister, we stood by that spot where this little girl was shot. The ghetto was becoming a place where less and less people were there. First, the ghetto was made up of about 6 very big buildings, 3 or 4 stories, but they were emptied. How were they emptied? We didn't know. We knew that in the morning when we woke up, there were less and less people there. Where were they? That's the interesting, terrible thing. There were no better psychologists of death. As we all know, especially I'm sure this audience knows, that they were using the best psychologists, the best doctors, the best scientists to make sure that this killing machine is very efficient. So we'd wake up in the morning and this neighbor room was empty. Where were the children that I played with the day before? They were gone. We knew where they were going, but we were afraid to say it. At that time, we already heard the word gas. But I remember my father said to my mother, they spoke Yiddish, and he said, I can't believe that they will take healthy people and just kill them. See, we thought that healthy people go to work. This is what they need them for work. But to just destroy them, it didn't make any sense. But people disappeared. After timing is very hard for me to know, but after a time, 2 buildings were emptied of people. Then another 2 buildings were empty. So we called it, I remember my father said, "Oi, this is a kleine ghetto." Oh, what a small ghetto it is. It was only 2 buildings. People were dying of terrible starvation. My father was lucky, he had some kind of a job, and he was allowed to walk out of the ghetto with some kind of paper, and he was working somewhere, and he came back and he brought some food. But this was the beginning of serious starvation, because it was a certain way, a certain death. In fact, their doctors and their very, very educated nutritionists told them how much food to give us in order for us to die at a certain time. So if they needed this barrack of people to die in 3 months or 2 months, they gave a certain amount of food. If they needed to die in 3 weeks, then the diet changed. If they needed them to work, then again, the diet changed. Obviously, they didn't need us anymore in that place, in the ghetto, because the death rate was increasing very, very quickly. We had no doctors and there was one doctor. The reason I know some of these things, my father told me. My mother told me about the death of her family as much as I could bear to listen while I was already in New York City. My father told me about what's happened in the community. And there were less and less people because they were liquidating the ghetto. That's another thing. They would move you from place to place. I was very lucky. I was in 3 places only. So it started in a ghetto. Then we went to a labor camp. Then we went to an extermination camp. It was like a funneling. And there were the people that all the families, most of them were killed in some way or another, even before gassing. And there were less people, so they went to labor camp, only the strong people who could work. And then everybody, without whether you worked or not, went to concentration camp where the gassing and the killing took place. So I remember a day when we all had to leave where we stayed and the buildings, and we were all told to sit. There was a church, a big church. Every little town in Poland has a church, a Catholic church, and they made us sit because there was a lot of ground around. And then the shooting started. Now, I was at that time about 4.5, and I remember sitting on my mother's lap. She was sitting outside per command. That's what we were supposed to do. And she was shielding me with her body. And they were shooting just absolutely everywhere. My father wrote a little bit about it, and he mentioned how he was watching his friends being shot. Families were shot. For I have no idea why. Our time wasn't up, so we were not shot. Now, they shot close to 1,500 people in one day. Children, families, because the families were sitting together. Everybody was sitting together. So if they walked over to a family of 15 or 10 or whatever, they shot the whole bunch. Why? Because there was a train waiting, and the train could only take a certain amount of people. So they had to get rid of those. In other words, we were numbers. We weren't human, as many of you know that. Because it's very hard to kill a human while you're looking at that person. But if you don't think the person is human, that is easy. That is easy to shoot. In fact, I once had a dream, I must say, that I was holding a baby, and I had a lot of nightmares, by the way, for many, many years. And the person who was shooting me in my dream said to me, "What is your number?" And I said, "I am not going to give you my number. I'm going to give you my name." And in my dream, he said, "Then I can't shoot you if I know your name," which is very interesting because that's exactly what happened. Most of the people were shot and gone, and that's how we lost close to 15,000 Jews in that town. Oh, that's the beginning of the loss. Where they were all, those that were left were put on a train that was waiting already. And the trains were going some to Auschwitz and some to labor camps, because they were still in the process of building the factories, building ammunition. It still wasn't the end. They needed the slave labor, so they left. I, my mother, my father, with about 50 people, were left. We had no idea why. We were outside still. We were, all around there were corpses. And I remember my mother saying, "Now they're going to shoot us. Why are they leaving us like this?" So my father went to check. He was always the communication person. And he came back, "Oh no, we are the cleaning up squad." So here we were, I, my mother, my father, and the other people also started cleaning, meaning picking up the bodies and putting them into graves. There were these gigantic communal graves, which the men, the Jewish men, had dug a few days earlier. That's what we knew something was coming, because it always started with digging graves. That was the first signal. They got all the men together, dug graves, and the question was, who are the graves for? Some of us would be there. We just didn't know who. This time it was just indefinite. Anybody, not men, women, children, everybody. And I remember walking behind my mother because I was frightened. I was holding on to her, and I was helping her pick up some pieces. Some of the pieces that she had to pick up, and they had bags, and because one thing the Germans were afraid is of epidemics, so they couldn't let the dead lie around. I don't know how long this took. Timing is very bad for a child. For me, I can't remember, was it a day, 5 days, 2 weeks? I don't know. But I know that everything had to be cleaned up because they were leaving the place. They were closing up the ghetto. And you know that one of the big things was leave no signs of anything. Leave no witnesses, leave no signs. So by the time we finished, there wasn't one bit of blood outside. We had covered everything up. And I remember I and my mother walked inside the barracks. They weren't barracks, they were regular buildings. And I began to fix the beds. So I remember helping with the pillows, so that when we walked out of that room, it like absolutely nothing happened. That was the end of Tomashov Mazowiecki. There are no Jews there now. I went back with my grandchildren, my children, no Jews. Many years ago, there was one Jew there, but this is completely, exactly what Hitler wanted. A place in Europe that has no Jews. There was nothing there anymore. We got on the truck and we went to the next camp. That's called Starchowice. That was about an hour, but again, I don't know timing. I don't really know exactly. We were on a truck and it wasn't a very long time. It was still daytime. And we arrived to a camp that had barbed wires all around. The ghetto here didn't have any barbed wires, but there were people standing with guns. I call it the live fence. They were Ukrainians. They had paid Ukrainians guards who were very happy to do it, by the way. They got money, they got food. All they had to do was guard us and shoot us if we walked out. So they were great. Here, this was different. Here we had barbed wires, and there were four towers where the Germans were sitting with their machine guns. And that's the first thing my mother said to me. You see, look at it. I looked up because we didn't have that in the ghetto. She says, they're watching you, she said to me. They're watching you. And if you do something wrong, you'll be shot. These words I knew. I just watched all the shooting. So I knew exactly what she meant. And I said to myself, I will do absolutely nothing that will cause me to die, especially since my mother and father were not home at all. We had a little barrack. Starchowice was an old camp. I think it was an army camp for the World War I. There were rickety barracks. There were just nothing closed well. The doors were half broken, whatever. But we got one of them, and we had a few beds, like those triple deckers or whatever. And we had the very top one with other families. And every morning, a truck would come at about 5 or 6. I think it was that time. I don't know. And my parents would leave. And I remember my mother saying to me, remember, I am not going to be here with you. You have to behave well. And do you remember what I taught you? I said, yes. And she said, let's practice. So I'd go down and she said, okay, you see a German coming towards you. What do you do? I said, I move to the side. Okay, she said, what else do you do? I lower my eyes. She said, no eye contact. What else do you do? If you're wearing something on your hair, like a kerchief, take it off. You have to give them the right of way. Are you listening? I said, yes. And that's exactly what I did, because I knew what would happen if I didn't. One time, a woman, I was always shocked, an older woman, I don't know how it happened. Somehow she wound up face to face with an SS man. And there was an announcement immediately. They had loudspeakers. We're going to show you what happens if you don't obey. And I remember, I've seen shooting already, but she wanted to see cause and effect here. I remember she took me to the shooting, and she said, now look, this is what's going to happen. Do you remember she went straight and she didn't give the right of way to this Gestapo? That's what's going to happen. And I watched as she was shot. And what I remember, the terrible thing was she had 3 little children, and when she fell on the ground, 3 kids ran on her body and cried. And I said, oh, at least not my mother. I said, we will obey the rules. Absolutely. I have one more thing, because it's Pesach. Somebody came over. There was some woman. To me, she was a woman. Maybe she was 16, 17 years old. And she said, come, I'll give you, she gave me flour and water. We only had maybe 10 children left. They were all taken somewhere. Again, shot, disappeared, starved to death. People disappeared. You saw them one day, you didn't see them the next day. But here we were, 10 or maybe 15 children standing around outside, and this woman made a makeshift stove. She had like some kind of I don't know what it was, something that I know the Yiddish word, blech. What is the word in English? I can't remember. Anyhow, what is it?
Heating plate.
No, something like made out of very light steel, something, and under it, she put some newspapers, and it got hot, and she said, "Now hurry up, and we made flat things, and she gave me each one a fork, and she said, do it very quickly, and I said, oh, if I don't do it quickly, I'll die. This was my mindset. Quickly means die. So I did it, and about 10 minutes later, each child had a little flat, like a pancake, very, very flat, and the woman said, don't eat it until your parents come home. And I want to tell you, the hunger was so great that not to eat it took all the courage I had. I was about almost 5.5, not yet. I was around, and I said, I got to take a bite. I said, no, I have to obey. When my parents came at night, my mother looked at it, and those were her words. Oh, I just remember her words. She said, oh, it's Pesach. It's Passover, she said. It's the first night of Passover. This was the matzah that I made. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what Pesach was. I didn't know what being Jewish was. I didn't know any of it. I knew the words, but I didn't know the meaning behind it. So she cut it in threes. We each had, I think my father made a prayer because he used to go to a yeshiva. And that was my first Passover that I look back later on. And this was also the first night of the Warsaw Uprising. That was in 1943. And as I told you, there were less and less kids. And one day, my father didn't go to work, and these were his words, hide her. Well, as I told you, I had the upper barrack, the upper bed, and apparently there was a crawl space that I didn't know about, of course. It was covered up with blankets or something hanging. They shoved me up there. My mother went with me. And within 2 minutes, everything was closed up. And I heard the Germans come into the room and screaming, haraus, and shooting. And bullets went whizzed right past me. And my mother is holding me, and she puts her hand on my mouth because she was afraid I'll make a noise. Because, you know, children cry. And there was cases where they gave up. They showed they revealed the hiding place. So many times parents had to choke the children to death, especially babies, because if it's, 20 people have to be saved and you have one baby, so you weigh it and you can't help it. This time we were just the two of us, and my mother's holding it so tightly that for weeks I had black and blue marks right here from a whole arm like that. And from the window, I saw all the kids I played with go in a truck. And we sort of knew where it was because they had the parents, the adults, I guess, I don't know if they were all parents, dug graves. We knew they were out of town. So we knew that that there was the graves for the last of the children, because again, they were closing that camp. There was another thing, by the way. They would open up a camp, do whatever had to be done, and then close it up and move whoever is left someplace else. I really don't know. I think it was, I guess the psychology was not to get used to it any place and not to make friends. If you make friends, you may have revolt, or we always did. We never knew where we were. And in that place, they had gigantic factories that I visited after on a trip. There were these factories where my parents went, and they worked in ammunition or something. It was a powder, an explosive powder that if you inhale, you die. And when I and my daughter and my grandchildren went to visit, they showed us the graves that every day after work, after the factory was closed, they would pick up the bodies from the people who worked there. So that my parents survived that type of a factory. And then here we are, and I am the only child left. I was the only hidden child there. And my mother said to me, she did all the talking usually. And she said to me, look, they can't see you anymore. So you have to be in this room. I'm going to lock the room. I'll close the windows, everything. You are not to talk to yourself. You are not to cry. You're not to sing. You're not to do anything. You are supposed to be as if you're dead. I will come in the morning. I will leave you here in the morning. Maybe I don't even know about food, by the way. I don't remember eating. I must have had something to eat or drink. And I'll come back at night. And she was gone 12, 15 hours. And I remember being in the dark room. And you know what I said to myself? This is so weird that I don't understand how I remember. And I said to myself, I am the only Jewish child. I didn't even know what Jewish was, but I knew that if you're a Jewish child, you have to die. So I'm the only Jewish child. I have to survive. That was my thought. I have to survive. I have to survive. I knew nothing about another ghettos. I knew nothing about the world. I didn't know about another country. That's all I knew. And I was there for such a long time. And then one day my mother comes and says, you could go out now. I'll tell you, I was overjoyed. I saw the sky. I was outside. I was walking around the building. We're going to Auschwitz. I heard about Auschwitz. But you know what? I was so happy to be out that Auschwitz did not have any kind of a meaning to me. By then I was 5.5. We are walking to the train. My mother, I'm small enough so she's holding me. My father is crying. And he says to me, be a good girl. He touches me, be a good girl, he says. Because the men were going to the left, in the same train, by the way. And we were going up to the cattle car. And I saw all those Germans with their guns and the dogs. And I didn't know why I said to Mom, they see me now, they see me. She says, don't worry about it. Let's just get onto the train. Years later, I thought to myself, maybe they didn't want to waste a bullet on me. I was going to Auschwitz after all. I don't know how much you want to know, but we got onto the train, and more women, and more. I'm the only child. And it's getting very hot. This is like springtime, April, May. Very, very hot. And we are standing close together, and the train starts. And I remember that I did not have to stand under my own weight. I leaned against the body in front of me, and my mother was standing, holding her hand around me. And that's how 2.5 days later. I don't remember food. I don't remember drink. I remember the terrible, terrible smell, because everybody was going to the bathroom wherever they stood. Terrific crying, screaming and crying. But I remember that even in all this, I could go to sleep. I remember putting my head on the person in front of me, who was an adult, because where I stood, it was dark. There was a tiny window, but I never got to that window, of course. And we swayed, and I remember standing like this endlessly. I don't remember eating, but I must have had something to eat, because then we arrived to Auschwitz. What I remember is that light. I didn't have that light for a very long time. And when I got onto those cattle car, they had to pick me up. Here, they had a platform, and we could go down. And I remember going down with my mother, and I'm holding her hand very tightly, and I see the dogs. And those dogs are looking at me. I can't tell you. I have not been able to touch a German Shepherd. I cross the street in my home here in Highland Park. When I see somebody walking, I live on a street where people go to the park. I can't touch a German Shepherd. And they had a muzzle on, and the saliva was dripping, and it was looking at me. And I said to my mother, now I'm going to die. She said, no, remember what I said? You have to obey the rules. You will not run. They're trained to kill only if you run, and you're not going to run. I said, no. I stood very, very still. And then she says, get undressed. I said, why? Get undressed. They're checking us. And we all I see all women standing, 2 by 2, 2 by 2, wherever, as far as your eyes could see. And the people, I never saw Mengele. If I did, I didn't know. I must tell you, I wouldn't have, I didn't know who he was. So I don't know. But people came over and began checking us all over. And I say to my mother, what do they want from us? She says, if we have any kind of boils, if we're not healthy, she said, look up. And there were the crematorium, and I saw the smoke. And she said, that's what's going to happen to us. I said, are you healthy? She says, I'm very healthy. And she went like this to herself, very healthy. And I remember turning around and saying, how am I? She says, oh, you look great. You'll be fine. And that's how I felt. Now, usually, nobody under 12 gets into Auschwitz proper, Auschwitz-Birkenau, because the crematorium were at full blast, and you go straight. A few years ago, there was a professor at Rutgers. He wrote a book, and I went to hear him, and he wrote about my arrival. My name is in his book. I was the youngest child, he says, on that train. And there was one more child, but I was the youngest. Here's my birthday and everything, I guess from research. And he said that we arrived on a Sunday, which I didn't know. Sunday, the Germans were Christians. They had 4 crematorium going, and they didn't want the 5th. So they allowed all of us to get into Auschwitz. And that's how I was spared. There were to me, there were just many miracles. That was the first one. I got into Auschwitz, but before I got in, they shaved my hair. I had braids. They put me on a bench, shaved my head, shaved my mother's head. I'm standing on all that hair. There was hair everywhere, And the woman who's shaving my head looks at me and she says, you poor child, you poor child. I didn't know why I was such a poor child. I thought everybody does it. I was with a group. Everybody's head was shaved. I couldn't find my mother, without her hair, but she found me. And then she took my hand and we walked into, gates were open. We went into Auschwitz. We got a barrack there. I had a middle barrack together with her, a bunk. And that's when she began to teaching me again how to sleep with a lot of people. Turn this way, turn that way. But one thing she said to me, I have to tell you something. You see, my mother believed in telling me everything. She hid absolutely nothing from me because she thought the more I know, the more I'll be able to save myself. She said, you can't go to the bathroom when you want to. That's what I said. That's not possible. What do I have to pee? What do you mean? She said, listen to me. We will be all going together in the morning and maybe at night. During the day, you are not to go to the bathroom. How can I hold it in? She said, you will learn to do that. You will learn. Let me tell you, I learned very quickly. And the time when we all went to the bathroom together, I took my grandchildren and my family to see those gigantic holes in like a wooden plank. I fell in one day because it was so big and I was so small. I was the only child. And I remember people trying to get me up, but I had no hair. So, and then somebody was mercifully gave me, used some kind of a hose. But then the hunger, till now, the hunger was pretty bad, but I have never imagined that I could live through such hunger. My mother gave me her peace. And she said, you know what? I'm not feeling well. I can't eat. I was hungry on her portion and my portion. And I must tell you, I took it. I knew that she wasn't eating. And I don't know, I guess I kept saying, Mom, I don't see you eat. She says, I'm just not hungry. I'm not feeling well. You'll do me a favor. Just eat it. And that's how we were online. The worst of it was the appel, the French word, the counting. We were counted. That's before tattooing. You see, when you were tattooing, they just called your number. They didn't have to count you. But I remember standing 5 deep, and a woman. People tell me there were no women SS. There were. There were women Gestapo, and they were terrible. I was more scared of the women. I know they were women because they wore a skirt. I could tell the difference. And people said, no, you don't remember. I said, I remember. So I did research. Yes, they were women. And each time they would shoot somebody who was standing on appel for no reason. You didn't know. All women, by the way, only women. Was the person too short, too tall, moved around? I don't know. But one day I just couldn't stand after 3 or 4 hours. And I remember I was in the front line with my mother. And I began to just sort of very little bit sort of move around. And a woman grabbed me right here and she took me out of the line. And my mother thought I'm going to be shot. People were shot for less than this. She looked at me and she started hitting me. I remember looking up just like that. And I remember what my mother said, don't do anything to upset anybody. Be very quiet. But she didn't predict that, so she didn't tell me then. But in my head, I said, I'm going to be very still. And she hit me so much. And you know what I said in my head? You can kill me. You can absolutely kill me. You will never know how much you hurt me. This was a resistance that I heard from other people. You tried not to show your pain. And somehow her hand got all red. My cheeks were all this. Not a drop came out of my eyes. She pushed me back for no reason. She could have shot me into a line. And that's when I started crying, but not out loud. I was heaving throughout the rest of this standing outside. And when we got inside the barrack, I couldn't stop it. I remember I was just like, no crying, no sound came in. But I remember going like this. I just couldn't until I calmed down. It was 2 or 3 hours later from the fear. And then one day I couldn't open up my eyes and I couldn't open up my teeth. They were stuck. And later, and I was getting sick. And I found that I had diphtheria. Can you believe it? My mother told me that later on. Diphtheria and scarlet fever. They took me to a hospital and they closed the doors. I don't remember anything about the hospital because I had fever. I don't remember anything about it. But I remember after a few weeks, my mother told me it was a few weeks, somebody came in and said, okay, you're done. Let's go. I said, go. I want to go to my mother. No, you're not. You're not going back. You're not going to see your mother anymore. And then she gave me a pair of shoes, I remember, and I didn't know what to do with them. And she said to me, a girl of 5.5 should know how to put on a pair of shoes. Of 5.5, because I didn't know. She took me to a camp called the Zigeunerlager. They had just killed 40,000 gypsies in one night, and they had room for children. It's for the first time I saw children. I was really thrilled. I even knew some of them. I recognized them from Tomashov Mazowiecki. They went somewhere, and some of them came to Auschwitz. And then when we walked in, the first thing we did, we got tattooed. I remember standing on line, and this lovely woman, may she rest in peace. I hope if there is a God, I hope she's with God. Or if there's a heaven, I hope she's in heaven. I don't know. She spoke to me and she said, what's your name? The first time somebody asked my name. And she said, That's not name. You don't have a name anymore. Your name is going to be 27,633. And I was 5.5. I've never been to school. I didn't know what a number was. She said, memorize it. I said, I don't know. I don't know. And it was in Polish. I don't know. She said, if you don't know, you will die. And you know what? These were the magic word that my mother has been using. This is, she prepared me. And as she's tattooing me, I watch. I don't know why I watched the ink going in and out, in and out, in and out. And then she said, look, here is a rag. Take this rag and keep it very tightly so it shouldn't swell. If you rub, it'll swell. If you press hard, it's not going to hurt you. And I said to her, this woman's hand, by the way, was shaking. There were 50 or 60 of us from age of 4 to age 10, maybe younger, all the children. And there was a girl that I knew from my Tomashov Mazowiecki. She was standing in front of me. And I always remembered her number. A few years ago, she committed suicide because she could never talk about this Auschwitz time. I speak about it. I told her it's very important for you, for me. It's a healing also for me to share this. And she couldn't. So she gassed herself a few years ago, which is absolutely shocking. Okay, so now I had a number and I began to memorize, not only my number, but the number of the person I slept with, because I saw that she was going to die. I recognized starvation at 5.5, but then I was 6, by the way, almost 6. I recognized starvation. So I was so afraid that they're not going to, that I'm not going to know, if she call her number, she won't say here if she's dead. So they're going to punish us. So not only did I know my number, but I recognized her number. And when she did die about, I don't know how long, when that was, the middle of the night, I woke up. I didn't worry about it. I wanted her number. So I knew her number. I dragged her by her feet. I remember how heavy she was. I put her in a pile with all the other dead. And when they called her number, I was said, I know the number. And that's one of the accomplishments, which I guess for me. And then one day I get a package. Now that was just impossible. How do you get a package in Auschwitz? I get a little bag, blue bag with a string around it. And there is a piece of bread, and I opened it up, and somebody reads to me. I can't read. And it says, happy birthday. It was my 6th birthday. And my mother remembered, of course, and she stole a potato and she bartered it for bread. For that, she was hit very badly. And I think that's what she died from at 45, because she said she has a terrible headache and she died that day. But I was so happy with the bread, but being me, if anybody knows me, I'm a saver. Things aren't terrible. My fantasy at 6 was like this. I was dying of starvation. I had nothing. I was just about to die. And then I take this piece of bread, I eat it, and I'm alive again. So I was afraid to eat it up because I wasn't dying yet. So in the middle of but I didn't know about bread being, I don't know, stale. In the middle of the night, I hear this little feet, all over me. There were rats this size. They tore my clothes. They ate up the whole bread. I never even tasted it. But a miracle of miracles, they didn't touch me. They could have bitten me. I could have been scratched and had some kind of a fever, something, disease from rats from the sewer in Auschwitz. I just didn't have any, I never ate my piece of bread, but otherwise I was okay. Then one day, they the same process. The people around me, the barracks, are emptying themselves. Where are the kids? The kids are gone here. The kids are gone there. Where there's one barrack, where are the children? Because we used to see them outside. We were in a courtyard near the twins. So kids were always outside, and twins were telling us their story, what happened. And I remember saying, oh, I'm so happy I'm not a twin, because I heard all the experiments. Kids talk. You know, people think kids don't know. We knew everything. We weren't children. We were little people. So we knew everything. Well, one day I said, oh, this barrack is empty and this barrack is empty. Must be our turn. And it was. They told us we're going to the crematorium. I didn't even think twice. You know what I said to myself? All Jewish children have to die, but we'll eat something. So they gave us a very big meal, a meal meaning cereal, some kind of very warm, sweet cereal. And after that, we got dressed. It was freezing outside, freezing. And I'm in the back with another, always were two partners. We always had a partner. Walked ahead, and I hear my name. Now, I haven't had my name for such a long time because I was 27,633. And I say, only my mother knows my name. And I remember her saying, where are you going? And I said, to the crematorium. All the women, there was a women's camp, started screaming. I remember turning to the little girl and said, why are they crying? Doesn't every Jewish child go to the crematorium? Anyhow, we walked, freezing. We walked, then we turned to the right, and there's steps. We go down the steps, and there's a gigantic room, very big room, cement, freezing. Everything is so cold. And there's a little room there, and then there are hooks all around the room with numbers. I didn't know any numbers, but I saw the hooks, and they announced, please, you're getting showers. You're going to put your clothing, especially your shoes, because on the way back, after you clean, you will need to find your clothes. So I looked at the place. I looked carefully. I want to go back and take the shower, but I knew that we weren't coming back. It was sort of a mixed thing. I knew and I didn't know. Well, we stayed there for about 3 hours, 4 hours. It was so cold. We were naked, and the kids stood together very, very close because it was so cold. And then they started screaming and yelling, and I don't know what happened. I never found out what happened, by the way. They sent us back, and on the way back, it's dark already. And the women, I must be outside, but I hear somebody calling, what happened? My words were, they couldn't do it this time. They'll do it next time. That's what they told us. They'll do it next time. We went back into the barrack, and there was chaos, absolute chaos. The woman who took care of us, or the capo, the eldest person, I don't know how they called her, the capo, she was very strict. She wasn't strict. Everything was like hefke. Everything was all over the place. Apparently what happened was the Allies were on the way, and the German were changing their clothes into some of them got rid of their clothes. I don't know what happened. All I know is that I stood still in the middle, and I said, what's happening? And then my mother shows up, and I didn't recognize her. I wasn't sure it was my mother. I looked at her. Yes, she is. Oh, she isn't. Yes, she is. And then she says to me, she looks terrible, by the way, like she's dying of starvation. And she says, listen, they are taking us all out, and we have to walk to Germany. It's freezing outside. It's like 300 miles or more. I'm going to die. She says, I'm going to die. Look at me. And then she looks and she said, but you will make it. I don't want you to be alive by yourself in this world. Children don't belong in a world like this. Will you stay here with me and die with me in Auschwitz? I said, yes. Now we can walk out, because it was like hefke, it was like chaos. Takes my hand, and we start walking out. The doors are open. People are screaming, dogs are yelling, and we're walking very close to the barracks, to the walls. We shouldn't be so conspicuous. And she must have planned this. And we walk into a building that's a hospital for women. Most of them are dead from starvation, from diseases. And she walks from that person to another, and she touches the person and disregards most of them. And then she finds one that's still warm, a young girl. And she says, get in. She was like 20 maybe. She was like an adult, but young. And she must have just died. And she says, get in. So I get in, and then she takes my body and she puts it in such a way where I have to breathe into the mattress and so forth. I know what she was doing. I knew exactly. She says, listen to me. You are not to move no matter what happens. You are not to nothing. And try not to breathe. Breathe very gently into the floor. Don't breathe any other direction. And no matter what you hear, nobody will uncover you but me. Nobody. And she disappears. I am lying there. The body is still warm. And I'm not afraid of the body. I never, this is a dead body. I've seen worse. What's a dead body? And it was warm, and I cuddled to it. So I almost felt protected. My head was under here, towards the mattress. Her hands were outside. My mother arranged so that she looked, like the blanket is here, and she's lying like that. And then I hear, Taraus, out. They were coming, they were running away, and the crazy people were taking with them cripples, people who couldn't walk. And I heard shooting, and I had screaming, and I don't budge. I cuddle very close to the person. I don't budge at all. And then I hear boots. I always hear those boots. And somebody stops by my bed. They were checking if these people were really dead or not. I held my breath. I knew that the blanket cannot move. And I don't know how long it was, but if it one more minute, I wouldn't have been able to. Somehow I did that, and the person moved on. And there was, again, screaming and yelling. And then there was silence. And then I smelled smoke. They set the place on fire. I'm not moving. My mother said not to move. I'm not moving. I'm going to stay there. The smoke was getting so all over. And all of a sudden, my mother takes off the blanket and says, Sie werden nicht du. They're not here anymore. They must have walked out. See, I wasn't out to see the last minute, but they had walked out of Auschwitz with about 50,000 people, I think. I don't know the numbers. I really haven't, done research on that. But I remember that she said, come get up. And I got up, and I have some kind of shoes. I'm wearing something white. I take her hand. And everybody, there were other people also hidden with it. It was like the dead bodies were waking up because women were hidden behind the dead bodies. And then we started walking, and we started walking to the gates, which was still electrified, by the way. It was all electrified. And they had locked the gates, so we couldn't get out. But we were standing right in front of the gates. And then things get very blurry in my head because people are breaking down a house where there was food, and people were giving out food and clothing. I don't know how long it took, but we were still locked in till a day or two, I think, after the Russians arrived. And when they arrived, they could not imagine what happened. And they took pictures, especially of the children. And I'm standing there with my number on the front row to show them my tattoo. And that was, I think it was January 27th, 1945. I was exactly 6.5. So this is why my memory is so good. And I appreciate you all listening. And all the children who didn't make it. They just were in the wrong place, the time. I was in the right place, the right time. Pure accident. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't richer, I wasn't smarter. It was just happened. And when we went back to our hometown, I stayed in Auschwitz for a while. That's a whole story with the Auschwitz and the Russians and all that. 5 kids came back. 4. I found the other one in Israel 5 years ago at a conference. I never met her. I knew the other ones. And my mother, not a single person. And my father had 3 sisters that came back out of 8 children, and one was shot by the Polish anti-Semite groups. I think they called NKVD. I don't even know what the letters were for. And she was shot in her head. And my father was in Dachau, and he found us on a list that we survived. And he came about a year later to our hometown because we all congregated where we saw each other last. And that's my story. And I hope it wasn't too long. I don't even know the time or anything, but.
Oh, but it's never too long to share the story of a survivor. We're all very grateful that you shared the story. So what we're going to do now, we're going to pause for a minute. We're going to ask our cantor. She's going to sing the El Malay, and we'll do that in English as well. And then I'm going to read a Kaddish for the Holocaust. And while we're doing that, if people have particular questions that you'd like Tova to address, if you could send them to Miriam in a chat, she'll be able to take those questions. And but if we could call on Cantor Shana at this point to lead the El Malay.
How do I get out of here?
El Malay Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Amtsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanvei HaShechina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Torim, Kezohar HaRakia Mazirim, V'nishmot Kol Acheinu B'nei Yisrael, Shenitbechu V'Shoah, Anashim, Nashim V'Tav, Shenechneku, V'Shenisrafu, V'Shenehergu, Shemasru et Nafsham al Kiddush Hashem, Began Eden Tehi Manuchatam, Ana Ba'al HaRachamim, Hastireim V'Seter Knafecha La'olamim, Utzror B'Tzror HaChaim et Nishmotehem, Adonai Hu Nachalatam, V'Yanuchu V'Shalom, Al Mishkevotehem, V'Nomar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the souls of our brethren who were murdered in the Shoah, men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered and suffocated and burned to ashes. May their memory endure and inspire deeds of goodness in our lives. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Yitgadal Auschwitz, V'yitkadash Lodz, Shmei Rabbah Ponar, Be'alma dira chirute, babiyar, v'yamlich malchute, Maidenik. B'chayechon uv'yomechon, Barkano. Uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Kavno. Ba'agala uv'izman kariv, Yanoswa. V'imru Amen, Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach, Leolam Ulamei Almaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh. Theresienstadt, Buchenwald, Treblinka. V'yitale, V'yitalal, Vilna, Shemei Dekucha, Bergen-Belsen. Barichu, Mauthausen. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Dachau. Tushbechata v'nechamata, Minsk. Da'amran be'alma, Warsaw, v'imru Amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. So if it's okay for a minute, I would like to actually begin with a question to Tova. And my question, Tova, is this. You're sitting with some pictures right next to you on the table. And it looks like a mother and child, but I'm not really sure.
After the war, I had TB. So they took me away again for a whole year to Germany. And my mother came to visit me. She could only come twice a year because I don't know, it was far, it was expensive. And so that's one of the times that she came to visit me, and a person passed by and he saw us talking and he took a picture. And then because he knew which sanatorium I was in, he gave it to me and became my most favorite picture, which is so interesting. Just a snapshot by a passerby in Germany, a German person. So.
And then there's another picture on the wall above the lamp.
This?
Yes. No, the first one.
This?
Yes. No.
Oh, that's a friend of ours years ago.
Okay.
No, that's these. I don't have too many pictures from the war. I don't have anything from the war.
Yes.
I mean, I don't have.
Well, it's amazing the things that happened, as you said, that you were able somehow to just.
It's a miracle. I mean, the idea that sometimes I make a joke, which is maybe not that Christianity saved me, because the Germans were Christians. I don't know what kind of Christians they were to be able to do what they did, but that Sunday, they only had 4 crematoriums and not the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
No. And that was told by a scholar. I had no idea why I wasn't killed right away.
So are there other people that would like to either make a comment or ask a question? If you'd like to, you could either raise your hand in the chat like that, or you could just physically raise your hand, and if we find you, we'll be able to, or just unmute yourself and ask a question. I think there's a lot of your family, Tova, that are on here with you as well.
Yes, yes, I'm very happy. I hope my grandkids, I'm sorry I can't see them. My daughter I know, but my grandkids, and I don't know who else is there. They've heard the story so many times, and I even took them to Auschwitz so they can say the Kaddish over the ashes. But we just like the Yetziat Mitzrayim story, the leaving of, the Egypt story, we should tell the story over and over again. so that those people who are ashes I feel like I'm visiting their grave when I talk about them.
You know, there are many survivors who will not go to Auschwitz or take their families.
Right.
Back. So I'm wondering what led you to have, first of all, the strength, the koach to do that, and the resolve to do that.
Well, you know, for some reason, I didn't feel guilty, like a survivor's guilt. I never had that, but I felt that I can't just forget, because I remember the children who died. I remember I played with them. You know, at one time I played with a little girl, and then when she disappeared. I knew she went to the crematorium. She left a coat. It was freezing outside. She left a coat with gloves. There were pink gloves inside a coat, and I could have used it. And I said, no, I will not take somebody's, my dead friend. I just felt that as a child, I wanted to undo it. That feeling that I used to walk on the street in Poland as if I could only find somebody, an SS person, and take them to the police or something. This constant thing of undoing, bringing back our people, making things okay again. And I felt that if I talk about it, all these people are with me, because I don't feel that I was special in any way. It's just that I'm a representative, and that's why. Oh, when I first came to this country, and I had a doctor, you know, a refugee has to go to a doctor to be examined. The doctor said, "I'll give you a gift. I'm going to take your number off. Well, it'll be free for you, and you're only 12. And by the time you grow up, you won't even remember you had it." I said, "I never want to do that. I was 12, and I said, I never want to forget." I don't know. I just had this thing that and I am a witness of how many people remember all that. And how long will I be here to tell the story? I don't know.
And the strength of your mother that comes through.
Right, but you're right. But at 45, she wanted to die. I think she willed her death.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's what happens a lot, is that during the war, where you have to, there were no depressions, there were no nervous breakdowns in Auschwitz. But after the war, there were suicides. When people realized they were safe, realized what happened, they didn't want to continue. Or they lost their faith. A lot of people lost their faith.
And when you came to the United States, was your first language Polish?
No, I forget. No, Yiddish. For some reason, I was in Poland till I was 10, but it completely disappeared from my mind. My mind doesn't have it anymore. Got rid of it. I don't know why. I don't know any Polish. Very little. When I'm in Poland, I can recognize, but I don't know any Polish. I can't understand that. That's sort of psychological, I think.
Is there anyone else who would like to share a thought? Yeah, somebody. There's a screen that says Alice. I don't know who that is, but if you could unmute yourself. Yes.
Tova Simcha.
Hi. You know my story.
I just want to remind you that since you joined the Yiddish class, the
Yes.
Yiddish reading group, that in the Lehenkreis, certain Yiddish words come up and they recognize.
You mean
that they're
Polish?
Polish origin.
Yeah. Very few, but I can't do a sentence.
That's
and
all
I'm
right.
surprised.
It's interesting what it triggers in you and
That's
what
right.
memories come back.
You're right. Some words come up, but I can't speak. I can't converse in Polish. Yeah, you're right. It comes back, but what for?
Are you in the same Yiddish group as Phyllis Tobin?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been with Tova. Tova was 10 years old and I was 11 years old when we met in Yiddish high school.
12. I was 12. And you were
You were
13. I wasn't in the country till I was 12.
Oh, really? Okay, so it was a year
Yeah.
later. Okay, I thought it was a year earlier. Fine, thank you. So yeah, and Mayor, her husband, the future, was in that same class, and we went through Mittelschule together.
Right.
And since that time, on and off, we've been in touch. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes we shared vacations.
Right.
We shared holidays.
We shared a car.
Shared a car.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taya. I think I know most people here, if not all. I'm Tova's daughter, and I'm here with some of my kids. You can't see them because they don't want to be seen.
Oh,
So I really,
okay.
I'm really happy that all of you could come and share and listen to the story. We did have a chance. I went back with my mom twice. One time I did manage, we took all the kids back with us. And one of the things I wanted to do, which paralleled her, was have my birthday in Auschwitz too, which is probably not what most people want to do, but going back there and visiting and taking the kids back we went to the barracks, she was talking about the bathrooms and and we did a tour. And so I thought it was really important that they see and they experience it, especially with her. So, like it's a meaningful story, and hopefully we will continue telling it as well, and my kids will as well. And so thank you also for listening to my mom.
Thank you, Taya.
I'm going to raise my hand, if I may, for a second.
Okay, and then after that, there's somebody named Alexander Sheldon, but whoever's talking can go now.
Thank you. This is Mark Magdul. My wife, Deborah, and I had the grand fortune of meeting Taya and Tova on the trip that they just mentioned after taking their kids to Auschwitz. It's, to use one of my few Yiddish words, beshert, that we met on that occasion. And we've had an outstanding friendship since then, which is about 5 years now, I guess, right, Ty? And thanks to our meeting there in Amsterdam, Taya and Tova have been to our home here in Mexico City, which is open also to everyone else, mi casa, su casa. So the story is something that we have passed on to a lot of our friends as well. A few of them are probably on this evening. I know my brother's there. I know another friend, Roy, and his wife are on there as well, whose wife, Esther, is also the daughter of a survivor. It's a great moment to be able to express our friendship. And if anything comes out of what happened then, is the love that still remains in the world because of this. And our story is something that we have to pass on generation to generation. My one son who lives here in Mexico and his family met Tova and Taya as well as one of Taya's sons. And again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to listen to your story a little bit more each time. I pick up more information each time around, Tova.
Thank you. You were the most wonderful host ever. And your wife, wonderful. I'll never forget our trip with you.
Thank you. The same. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi, for organizing this as well.
Okay, bye-bye.
I think it's so important that everybody has the opportunity to hear survivors, because we can all imagine that we come to a time when there'll be less and less survivors that we can hear from in person. So there was somebody who had their, yes, Alexander, I don't know if that's your name, but yes, go ahead.
No, it's Bonnie Lee.
Bonnie.
Tova,
Yeah.
Some of us have heard you speak before.
Right. Yeah,
And you say, yes, I've told this story before. No, every time you tell the story, it's different. You remember different things, and we feel different things of your memories that are so physical. That the physicality is amazing. So yeah, I never, this time you emphasize that you're talking for the children.
Yeah.
And this you've never said before. And God bless. Take care.
I just want to say something. I have here a wonderful couple, my son and my daughter-in-law, who fixed up the room so there's light. They bought big lights. I don't know anything about Zooming, and I usually like to talk. When I talk to people individually, this is like a new experience, but they were so absolutely wonderful to me. I just want to be grateful to the two of them, Joanna and Shani, have been here a whole day, making sure that this happens and that I'm sitting in the right place with the right light in the right seat. So I want to thank you very much. And thank you, because the more people listen, I feel that I'm doing something. And by the way, I don't know if there are any children in the audience or young people, but please tell it to others. When I sometimes I speak to high schools and I say to them, now it's your story. It's no longer mine. The moment I give it to you. So when I'm not here anymore, you have to tell the story. And I hope that some people will. Some people will do that.
So there are a few children on, but with your permission, we've recorded this.
Oh, good.
Our hope that we will show it to our religious school students in various ages and stages as they go along. And we're very happy that you have the correct lighting and you're ready for your close-up tonight.
Hello.
Yes.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, brother.
I'm brother.
Brother Sid.
I'm Brother Sid. I'm holding up a picture of my father so he could be, only if he was alive, he would be here with us. So Tova.
Yes.
So I'm going to tell a story, but it's not from war. It's not from Europe. It's from Brooklyn.
It's from what?
It's from Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn. Oh, Brooklyn. I forgot about Brooklyn.
Never forget about Brooklyn.
Right.
What was the year of your wedding?
My life began here in America, in Brooklyn. You're right.
Right. And what was the year of your wedding on Eastern Parkway?
Eastern Parkway? Oh, wow. You remember, huh? 1951 or 52, around, I'm not sure exactly. I started high school there.
1960, you got wedding.
No,
Well,
I came in 50 to Astoria.
In 60.
What?
You got married.
Oh, I got married in 1960.
Right. And in 1960.
Yeah, 60 years almost.
And in that year, my best friend, Barry Jacobs from Brooklyn, was having his bar mitzvah.
Okay.
So where did I go?
I don't remember any of
You don't
that.
remember? Well, I remember because I had nothing I wanted more than to go to Barry's bar mitzvah.
Well, I don't remember, but it's
My
good to
mother
see you,
wanted
you know?
My mother wanted me nothing better to do than to go to Eastern Parkway and be there on the wedding when you were welcomed into the family.
Oh,
So
yeah, I remember
missed
that.
out on the bar
place
mitzvah.
called Melrose, something like that.
So I
Oh,
missed
God.
out on the bar mitzvah, but I still.
You
to
were
this
a
day,
baby at the time.
I was a baby. I was 13, but I can remember you.
Yeah, you were young. You were young.
I can remember you prancing around during the dance.
That's right.
Oh,
With
yeah,
Uncle Charlie.
yeah, Uncle Charlie was there. That's
Well,
for sure.
it's been wonderful. I want to tell you, it's like the people who are listening to me now, everyone plays a role in my life and a wonderful part. And I just want to thank you because I don't see anybody anymore. So it's so wonderful to see all of you and, sharing each person. This is Mayor's family. And you know how terrible it is. He died within 5 hours of diagnosis, something. It's all, he used to come with me to every place, but lucky I don't have to go anywhere now. So I can sit and talk. But I
Okay,
just
thank you.
thank you for
Love you.
being here, really, brother, Sydney, brother. Yeah, thank you.
Can you see my father?
You what?
My father.
Of course I saw you. You mean it, your father?
I'm holding up a picture of him. Do you see it?
No, you're
Oh,
not
I don't
holding it.
see it.
I'm holding it the wrong way.
You got to hold it in front of the camera.
I don't know where the camera is.
Oh, oh yeah, Bessie.
No,
Yeah. Yes.
Go a little higher and in front of your face.
Yeah. Mayor's uncle.
There
Yeah.
we go.
This is wonderful. Rabbi, I'm having like a party with my family.
Okay.
Very
All right,
nice.
Tova.
Thank you.
We're happy to give you this opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you
Rabbi.
very much. It's a good ending to such a story, but it's good that my friends, my family, people from all over. It's Mark. Thank you. Just wonderful. Bonnie, everybody, good. Thanks. Susan. Oh, Susan Silver. Oh, Miss. I don't see her. Susan. That's another.
Hey, Mom.
Here is my other son. Hi, Gadi.
Tova, I'm blacked out. You can't see me.
Oh, okay.
But
You
I'm,
actually,
So
you
there's
actually
something.
have people here from all over the world because you have Mexico, you have Israel, you have Italy, people who stayed up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to listen to this. And I
Where is
know
this
for a
from?
fact there's some people here who've never probably met a survivor before, who've definitely never heard a talk. And so, yes, there's a lot of family here. Some have heard the story, but for sure there's people who've never met a survivor before and never heard a story before. And so I think it's nice and it's important that.
Hiya, thank you.
There's someone named Rob who has his hand up patiently.
Yeah. Hi there. Believe it or not, I'm Mark's brother, Mark Magdul's brother. And I just want to thank you for talking and becoming so close with my brother. And I wish I had the same relationship with you. It's I'm up here in Pennsylvania, so if you're ever up in this direction,
okay.
you have an open door invitation to my house, to us too. So, but it's fabulous. Mark has spoken so highly of you, and I couldn't resist. I had to join in on this. So, my blessings.
We're going to ask Jeff Grazel. He has his hand up.
Hi, I wanted to say hello to Tova.
Hi.
I am the nephew of Frida Tenenbaum.
Oh, wow.
So, I know that you went to Germany with my cousin Abraham Grazel.
No, I never went to Germany. I never set foot in Germany.
It was
when you went to, it was
we went to
Poland.
Poland with Bo.
When you did the documentary. Anyway, Abraham's
yeah.
my cousin and Frida is my aunt, and
Right.
I got introduced to Taya when she moved to Morristown, and it's so nice to meet you.
Oh,
also.
how nice. How beautiful. Yeah, I spoke to Frida 2 days ago. We keep in touch.
I see Mary is raising her hand. Mary.
Hi, Tova, it's Mary.
Oh, hi, Mary.
So I first want to say thank you for, giving these talks and for making an impression on especially the children and college students around the country, and making sure that people do know and are educated about what has happened. I think it's so important. And without you and people like you, they wouldn't know. And the second thing is, I saw a picture online with you and 2 other survivors where you're pointing to your picture.
Oh, yeah. That was amazing.
Can you quickly?
We were there the same time showing our number to the Russians, but we didn't know it. They all live they live, I don't know which one you saw. There was one picture where they have numbers showing.
Right, you all lived in the same area or something,
No,
right?
in New Jersey, not in the
Right,
same area.
so you didn't know that you lived in the area?
No, we were children. We didn't know. But it's interesting that we met afterwards. Yeah.
So it looks like Alice again has a hand up, but I'm not sure if that's Alice or a different name.
It's
Simcha.
Why don't you change your name?
This is a great occasion to officially acknowledge that my only child, Dove, was able to become a 5th in the Friedman family from time to time. They were very welcoming. And he could relieve himself of being a center of attention for a while and join the Friedman Club. So thank you all.
Okay, give her my love.
Mm.
We don't see anybody. Jeff Graysell, okay.
So I just want to once again thank everybody for joining us tonight. It's been a moving story, an incredible story. Tova, your memory is really unbelievable from that time. I imagine that so many things are just indelibly, etched into your memory. And as people have been saying, the more you tell the story, more details come out. And
Sorry, I just got to show you something. Some time ago, there are 3 stories of 4. I told you 5 kids survived. 1 lives in Germany. That's why we never saw her. I met her in Israel a few years ago. The other one, so here is a book called Surviving Auschwitz. It's an old book. It had a second edition already, and it's about my story and some other stories that somebody who wants to know can sort of look at it. You can probably get it on the internet for very little, because they're like people. Well, how long can you keep a book like that? They were $50 to begin with. You could probably get it for $5 or $6 on Amazon or something, if you're interested.
And I think Miriam sent out the link of one of the TV interviews or something that was in the chat earlier. But anybody who wants any of this information.
Okay, I want to just say something.
Yes, I don't know who's talking.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say.
I'm sorry. I have everything on. I have everything.
No, I just wanted to point out the book, the Kinderlager.
Oh,
remember
okay.
that one? It has your story. I don't remember the author, but it's called Kinderlager.
Oh, they changed the name. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, is that the same book?
It's a different name. The
Oh,
Kinderlager.
it's the same book.
It's the same book. It just changed the name. I don't know why.
Yeah, I have it in the other.
Oh, yeah, right. It's the same.
Okay. Great.
It's interesting that people say that I don't say the same thing. I do remember everything, but I can't say everything. So sometimes I spend more time on something which touches me at that moment. Like I can talk about some of the parts much longer. Like the ghetto was a terrible, terrible place where my grandparents were killed and all the elderly were killed. There were no elderly left. They killed all the people, and just some of us were left. I don't want to talk about that. That's also, I was too young. I saw it, but I'm not sure I got everything. I saw people dying. So also what I did in Auschwitz, we used to take walks, and while we took those walks, there were frozen bodies because it was freezing outside. So in order for us to pass, we had to pry the bodies up because they were now away. So all the kids just took the bodies and they were frozen and they put them away. I mean, there were things while we were in Auschwitz itself, lots of things. I mean, to be there for about 4 or 5 months, things happened there, and the kids talk, by the way. Oh, there was a joke. They were telling each other, the kids. One kid would tell the other one, I saw your parents, and I think your grandparents. And the other kid says, no, you didn't. I don't even know what language those kids spoke because they were from not everybody from Poland, but most of them were from Poland. They said, you don't even know how they look like. How can you say you knew them? Oh, well, let me show you. And then they showed the crematorium and the smoke. You see, your grandmother is right behind there. They were 5 or 6 years old. We knew everything. We knew everything.
There's someone named Chuck's iPad with a hand up?
I'm sorry, what?
I'm saying there's someone named Chuck's iPad with a hand.
Can you hear me? That's me. I'm on
Oh,
the.
hi, Julie.
Hi,
Hi.
my Aunt Frida is on the front of that book. My sister says on that book. My Aunt Frida's picture is there. She was a survivor on the book you just showed.
With me? No.
Yeah, the book.
Oh,
She's
oh,
on
wait a minute. Let's see. What are the pictures here? That's where they.
One of them is my aunt.
Oh
Frida.
yeah. Okay. That'd be good. Yeah, I'm here too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a movie. It's a movie.
My aunt Gloria is on with us now in her house. She's watching you.
Oh, okay.
She was a
That'll be
survivor.
interesting, because it's a movie. It's not a picture. They different. Yeah. I mean, I like to know who she is. Does she have the book?
She's not with us anymore. My Aunt Gloria is with us online now, but she's a survivor. She's also a survivor and lost a lot of family. She's
Well,
my
that's what I'm
only-
saying. Everybody's.
Tova?
Oh, go ahead.
Tova?
Hi. Hi.
It's Davey.
Oh, I can tell you, you haven't changed much.
Okay. There are a number, over the years, I've heard many, many different stories from you, and there are two that I think would be very much interest people. And one of them relates to the size of the number on your arm.
Oh,
and the other
I
one,
forgot. Yeah.
And the
oh,
other
what a good
one,
story.
Yes, and the other one, meeting the woman at that first convention of Auschwitz survivors. Remember, you were standing in line and you met a woman with a number that was similar.
Oh, to mine.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Both
But,
those
this is-
stories are very interesting.
But this is a very good story. The one that, thank you. When the woman tattooed me, she said to me, I'm going to give you a very small tattoo. By the way, my tattoo is tiny. It's beautiful. She said, and I'll do a beautiful tattoo because if you survive, she said, if you survive, or maybe when you survive, you'll get a long a shirt with a long sleeves and you'll cover it up and you won't be embarrassed. Those were the words. So I looked at it and she gave me a very beautiful, even, small tattoo. Can you imagine? And it was so kind. She did it so beautifully that I wasn't upset. That's the interesting part about it. You know? Yeah, I forgot about that. You're right. Thank you. I'm so glad people remember my stories.
Also, the other one was meeting that woman.
I can't.
At the convention when you were that first Holocaust survivor convention.
In Washington?
Yes. And there was
yes. Washington, D.C., yes. And by the way, in the last convention in Israel, I told you I never met the fifth person. So I go to a group, and it's a Hebrew group because they didn't have any more English groups left. So I did my thing in Hebrew. After I walk away, a woman taps me on the shoulder and says, I am the fifth girl you've been looking for.
Wow.
Just like that, I was shocked. By accident, I met her, and we correspond. She lives in Germany. That's why we never met her, because she never came back to Poland.
Right.
So we have two comments here. Noah has had her hand up,
Why don't you go?
and then she's going to be followed by Miriam.
Hi, Tova.
Oh, hi.
I'm friends with Taya.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I'm very grateful to be here and listen to you today. I had a question. You mentioned that you were taken to in Auschwitz. You were taken to the barracks with the kids.
Yeah.
How did your mother know that you were still alive?
That's what I don't know. I don't know. I think that, like every place else, how did she know to my birthday, and she must have been watching me somehow, or talk to people. People talk to each other. You see, if you read Elie Wiesel, or if you read other, you know that there's communication. Now adults, right? How did she know where I was? Well, I was taken away after I was sick, and I never got back to her. And I was shocked. In fact, there was one scene that I don't talk about because it's so weird. I was in the barracks, and I saw a woman that looked just like my mother, but she didn't say a word to me. I looked at her and she looked at me and then she disappeared. So I wasn't sure, but I think she kept tab on me. And when she found me already, she must have known that I was alive. It's just people do that, you know. Did you see this one? Did you see that one? And they bribe each other. She worked in the potato fields. So she could, if she can, she could steal and give it to somebody for information. You know, there was a whole life as I'm getting older. As a child, I didn't know, but there's a whole life that was going around with what's happening here, what's happening there. I, for instance, not in Auschwitz, but in like the ghetto, I would recognize the boots by the sound of the boots. I knew who was the Gestapo coming, and I knew if he was dangerous or he was a nice person. What does it mean nice? He won't shoot you when he sees you. So I could tell the difference just by hearing it.
Miriam,
you learn things that are just amazing.
Miriam, do you have a question?
Yes, first of all, Tova, thank you so much. This was so touching. You know, I'm a granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors, so it's always so touching, and your bravery and everything. One thing that really struck me was your mother, also, as the rabbi said. And I'm curious, as a mother and an educator, do you think that her approach to you, telling you things as they were, not sugarcoating it, do you think
it was the best thing in the world? I think that I saw that movie, which I did enjoy, by the way, Life is Beautiful. I think the little boy and the guy and then he gets killed at the end, and it's a game. It's a fantasy. You can't keep that away from children. Children have to know what's going on, because if she didn't tell me to be quiet, or if she didn't tell me the consequences, if she hadn't taken me to see that this person was killed because they didn't give the right of way to a Gestapo, I wouldn't know. She would talk to me constantly.
I think
all
it's
the
such
time.
a powerful point, because we want to protect our kids and we don't want to tell them terrible things, but we really,
it's a
by
mistake.
telling them the truth, we help them cope.
I'm always wondering when people don't want to take their children to the grandparents' graves or funeral. They have to know a grandparent can't disappear. There has to be a goodbye. There has to be, an ending. There has to be something. You can't just do that. So she always told me, she told me more. I didn't even bother sharing it with you. When I got out of the train, she said to me, I have to look for your father, because my father was in the same train, but a different, different place. They separated the men. And she said, I said, you go to, yes, she says, I will. And she gave me the suitcase, tiny one like this. And she said, don't let anybody take it away from you. Which is weird. I'm in Auschwitz. The dogs are everywhere. People are walking around with guns. They still barking, so I could stand still. And she's walking away from me, and she is leaving me a suitcase. And in my head said, better nobody touch that suitcase. I held it very tightly. And then she came back and she told me what my father told her, that he's going to Dachau, that he was tattooed. By the way, tattooing was only in Auschwitz, no place else. So he embarked with the men, he was tattooed and sent to Dachau. And she told me that. You see, she didn't keep anything from me. And 2 minutes later, somebody took our suitcase, and threw it away, which was sort of funny while I was protecting it for at least 5 or 6 minutes. It's interesting the way the interaction was.
She empowered you.
Very much. And I think I still have that.
Yeah.
I still have that kind of a thing, that we should do. People who know me.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you
for having me. I'm so glad I could share this for you're the next generation.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and for the family that had a reunion with you tonight.
Yeah, it was great.
Very appreciated.
Great family, wonderful. Thank you.
And you know, we at our congregation, we believe of the importance of hearing survivors as long as they are with us. And so we totally appreciate your sharing with great honesty everything that you've shared with us tonight, both the difficult parts and the sad parts and the educational parts and the empowering parts and the strengthening parts. And unfortunately, we still live in a world where anti-Semitism is just below the surface. So let's all just keep our strength and our resolve as Jewish people to continue with Jewish life, Jewish education, and as you say,
And
share.
remember,
And remember.
just like they tell us in the Haggadah to remember what happened umpteen years ago. We got to remember this.
So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Now I got to learn how to close this stuff.
So,
Thank you.